So I've got early access to Aino, and maybe you didn't know this, but she will be given away for free during the Archon quest, which is kind of funny because Aino will be only available to pull for during the second phase. So all of us get to play with C0 Aino during the first phase, and in today's video, I'm gonna give you a basic overview of Aino, how she works, my first impressions of her, and also share a couple of teams I found to be pretty good. Now keep in mind, footage shown here is from Creator Experience server, so final content is subject to change. Anyway, let's just quickly jump into her showcase. So I've got everything set up here, and starting with the skill, you can hold it down or just tap it, and it will be a 1-2 hit attack. As you can see, the damage is really small, and one thing I've noticed is that if you want to set up a vape with her, the problem is that the first hit is gonna be vaping, and I don't know, maybe it's possible to vape the second hit, but even when I distance myself, it didn't seem to work too well. But I also have a pretty high ping on this server. Basically, you just use the skill to gain the particles and apply a bit of hydro. Now moving over to the burst, it's gonna be this kind of a field she summons, and it will be attacking, I believe, every 1.5 seconds and applying hydro every 3 seconds. And yeah, the damage yet again is really small here. Now looking at the burst stats, as I said, the multiplier is extremely minuscule, but the duration is 14 seconds and the cooldown is 13.5 seconds, so a pretty short cooldown. And also the energy cost is only 50. So in short, you're gonna be using this burst to just apply hydro. The same thing with the skill. Still, going to her first passive, when the moon sign level of the party is at level 2, or basically Ascendant Gleam, meaning you have 2 NOD-KRAI units in the team, the Cool Your Jets Ducky, or basically the burst, will fire water balls more frequently, and the water balls will deal AoE hydro damage over a larger area of effect. From my own testing, and as you can see here, it seems like the burst will start hitting every 0.7 seconds or so, and will actually apply hydro every 2 seconds, which is pretty nice. And then as for the second passive, her elemental burst damage is increased by 50% of her elemental mastery, and let me tell you, this does not matter. Like, even with a fully buffed team, and if she has even over 1,000 elemental mastery, it just barely contributes to her overall damage. And yeah, the final passive shown here basically just tells you that if you use Aino in the team, she will increase the moon sign level by 1, which I'm assuming is going to be the norm when using NOD-KRAI characters. Now, taking a quick peek at the gear I'm using on her, she's equipped with the Event Claymore that was previously available. Basically, I think it's one of her best weapons because not only gives a chunky amount of elemental mastery, like I think it's 285 total with the passive active, but more importantly, the passive also helps restore 24 energy to her burst when she uses the skill, so that's like half the burst recovered. She could also be using the new craftable from NOD-KRAI called Master Key. Basically, it's best utilized if she's with another NOD-KRAI unit in the team, and again, this will be the norm when using her in any team because specifically this passive will give additional 120 EM, so in total she can get 240 EM in level 2 moon sign team or Ascendant Gleam. And yeah, the substat also gives like 61% energy recharge, but overall I'd still say the Event Claymore is better than this, but if you don't have the Event Claymore, then this is probably the second next best option. Other than those 2 other claymores, since her damage kind of sucks, you can also just use her Favonius Claymore or the other one called Makaira Aquamarine. I don't know how to pronounce it correctly. But this weapon specifically is probably the best support weapon to use if you want to provide for the team some attack boosting. Now, she was also equipped with the new NOD-KRAI support set, Silken Moon Serenade, and I'd say this will be her default set. The extra energy recharge from the 2 set is pretty nice, and then obviously you'll probably want to use her with a second NOD-KRAI unit so that she can then grant 120 EM for the whole team when using her skill or burst, or I think it just says when you deal any kind of elemental damage with her. Other than this set, if you're going to be using Aino in Nilo teams, and there's going to be lots of Dendro application, it will be possible that she will be the one triggering blooms. So in that case, it's also fine to give her something like Flower of Paradise Lost. Otherwise, you can also slap on her Deepwood to just decrease the enemy's Dendro resistance. And yeah, the main stats right now are Elemental Mastery, and crit rate, but honestly, again, because her damage doesn't really matter, critical rate could be useful for Favonius Claymore, or when she's contributing to the Lunar Charge reaction damage. Otherwise, you can also use like ER Sands, or just go with full EM build for Nilo teams. And that's basically her kit. So with that short intro to her kit out of the way, is she good for any teams? Well, it turns out, yeah, there's a few of them where she works quite nicely. Now, obviously, because she's Hydro and also she applies Hydro off-field, the first thing that comes to mind would be Pyro damage dealers, and more importantly, if they're going to be able to vaporize their damage from Aino's Hydro application. Well, to be honest, her Hydro application is still pretty slow, but I did find her to work quite well in this Arlecchino team. The rotation I'm using is shown here below, and the team is made up of Innefa, Arlecchino, Benny, and of course Aino. Now, similar to Citlali, Aino's application is just barely enough for Arlecchino to vaporize her attacks. And the best way I've found to do this so far is just by doing the usual N3 dash attack, which is basically do the first 3 normal attacks and then dash to cancel them, and just keep repeating. Now, it's important to know that this team works well because both Innefa and Aino are in the team, which means the moon sign level is level 2, and if you saw my previous Lauma video, the team resonance bonus will be granting up to 36% lunar reaction damage increase, so in other words, better damage coming from Innefa and Aino if they participate in lunar charged. Then the new Silken Moon Serenade artifact set will give the full 120 EM boost for the whole team, and more importantly, the main DPS unit can actually use the new NOD-KRAI DPS set because, as it says, first of all it gives 80 elemental mastery from the 2 set, which is great for vaporize, but then the 4 set specifically says when any nearby party member triggers a lunar reaction, and if the character using this DPS set is on the field, they will gain either 15% or 30% critical rate, depending if the party's moon sign level is nascent or ascendant. And obviously, since the team has both Aino and Innefa, Arlecchino will be getting 30% critical rate. And don't forget, the lunar reaction damage is also increased by 10%, which stacks together with the support set. So yeah, I actually found this set to be almost tailor-made for Arlecchino when specifically using Innefa and Aino. And it's kind of nice if you're going to be farming one of the sets, and you can just slap it on one of your DPS units if both Aino and Innefa are in the team. I mean, heck, the more NOD-KRAI units come out, the more relevant this set becomes for main DPS units because you just need 2 of those units to cause a reaction, well, to be specific, lunar reaction, and then you just gain 30% critical rate, which is kind of crazy. Now, the other team where Aino works quite well is Nilo Bloom. If you haven't seen my Lauma video that just came out, basically Aino more or less helps improve Lauma's personal damage, but also she brings all the other buffs I've just mentioned to the team. And specifically for Nilo, she can actually be equipped with the new NOD-KRAI craftable sword, and it's actually pretty crazy because by default when reaction is caused, Nilo's HP will be increased by 32%, but if the moon sign level is 2, then she gets another additional 32% HP, so 64% HP if the team has both Lauma and Aino, or basically if the team had any kind of 2 NOD-KRAI units in it. And yeah, Aino can also work as a nice bloom triggerer, and you can give her like Flower of Paradise Lost set, but besides this team, you could also go for Aino Innefa Lunar Charge team, which means you also want to use some kind of an Anemo unit to decrease the resistances, and then use either another Hydro or Electro unit. And I even used this team against the new upcoming Stygian Onslaught boss. I didn't read too much about him, how he works, but from what I understand, he will at some point generate this shield, and it's easier to break it with Lunar Charged or Electro Charged reactions. So obviously this team works pretty well, and yeah, in this case I was using Aoife to just keep doing some attacks. Now, finally, we have the Constellations, and I would say they are pretty decent. The first one basically says when she uses her skill or burst, she will gain 80 elemental mastery, and then also actually the whole team gains 80 elemental mastery as well for 15 seconds, so overall, a pretty decent upgrade for her. Then the second Constellation is probably the most important here, because when she's off field and the burst is deployed, as long as somebody deals damage, every 5 seconds, an additional Hydro attack will be launched at the enemy. Because it's only triggered every 5 seconds, I'm not sure how super beneficial this will be, but for example for Arlecchino teams, I can see this additional Hydro application helping a little bit more with the consistency of vaporizes. Constellation level 3 is completely useless, it just improves her burst damage and it's not a lot. The 4th Constellation gives her 10 energy when using her skill, which is pretty decent. The 5th Constellation improves the skill damage, again, not super relevant. And then finally the 6th Constellation, for 15 seconds after using the burst, everyone's Electro Charge, Bloom, Lunar Charge, and Lunar Bloom reaction damage will be increased by 15%. But if the moon sign level is Ascendant Gleam, then the damage will be further improved by 20%. So 2 NOD-KRAI units in the team at C6, she will then grant 35% damage increase for these reactions. I mean, basically this is only gonna matter for NOD-KRAI units like Innefa or Lauma. Other than that, I'd say the best stopping point if you're gonna be pulling for additional Constellations would be C2. And yeah, that's basically it. A really quick overview of Aino. Now, in my opinion, since she's gonna be given away for free, I would consider it to be her decent Hydro off-field applicator, but the reality is, I feel like she's still best utilized in teams with 2 NOD-KRAI units, so counting her and then another NOD-KRAI unit. Since then, she will be able to activate all the other benefits like for the craftable weapons or the new artifact sets, and of course, the actual team resonance bonus for lunar reaction damage will be covered as well. I also know that Flint is gonna be released in the 2nd phase, and even if the team will have enough of Flynn's and Aino, 3 NOD-KRAI units, I still think she will be pretty useful for him because it was mentioned during the livestream that Flynn's damage will be counted as lunar charge damage. And so if you're gonna get her Constellations, especially if she gets to C6, I feel like she's gonna be one of the better, if not the best options for Flynn's. But yeah, these are my thoughts about Aino. Hopefully you found this video interesting, and I will be releasing a lot more content about NOD-KRAI. Next video should be about all the new NOD-KRAI weapons, and then later on, Llama's guide video is also coming out. But yeah, I'd appreciate if you could press the like button on this video, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time.